let's talk about Supergirl. Don't forget, guys, the original video link is in the description. Subscribe to this guy's channel if you want to. Don't forget to subscribe to my brand new superhero reaction channel. Let's go.
So, the trailer for Supergirl just dropped, and it looks like a lot of fun. Millie Alcock looks great as Kara. I love the little snippet we got of her in Superman, and I can already tell she's going to be fantastic here. The movie's going to be a direct...
Do you think Millie's already going to be fantastic looking at her? I can't tell just a whole bunch just yet. But I'm hopeful.
Adaptation of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. The graphic novel written by Tom King with art by Book Wasevely from 2021.
No spoilers,
the
guys.
Had the same title until pretty recently. Superhero movies aren't really known for doing direct adaptations like this. With the exception of something like Watchmen or Invincible, comic book movies tend to be more in the business of taking inspiration as opposed to adapting a specific story one-to-one.
And ruining it. I like Zack Snyder's take with, the DCEU, but I kind of hate how much he butchered the Death of Superman storyline. I really hate this. The Death of Superman is such a great story. The Roger Stern novel, the comics, everything. But he butchered it. He really, it's probably studio pushing. Let me know if you think that was all Zack or the studio that screwed that up. Let me know in the comments.
And I wonder if Supergirl will take those same kinds of liberties or open the door for more direct comic adaptations in the future. The original graphic novel is incredible. Cool to know. So if this movie is anything like that, I think we're in for a good time. And I think that's all the news that happened this week. Yep, that's all I can think of. No other terrifying, earth-shattering events, and certainly nothing that would make me scared for the future of the entertainment industry as a whole. That was weird. What was that? Oh, hey, look, it's Lobo. Hell yeah, I love that guy. This video is sponsored by LabCorp On Demand. LabCorp On Demand is what they know. We're feeling, but it helps figure out exact Corp On Demand. Necessary. Million samples. Royal Boy.
On now.
I really like the music that they picked with it, with Blondie and everything. It's very different from the original Superman teaser.
Which, by the way, Blondie has been used in hundreds of movies and TV shows, saying that it's James Gunn because Blondie's in there. It's like, come on, guys. Come on.
Which I think is interesting. That first trailer was much more like a slow build up, this sort of like emotional, dramatic thing, whereas this just looks like a really fun movie. But there's nothing wrong with that. It's a genuinely really good trailer for a movie that genuinely looks really good. I really like the newspaper that we see at the beginning where Superman gets this giant front page spread about him saving like a, what was it, like a nuclear reactor or something like that, which makes sense, that deserves a big story. And then right in the corner, we see that Supergirl saved the cat. Who wrote?
I like that a lot, too. It was overshadowed by the urination incident, which I really didn't like very much, but I am understanding why they did it. Everybody that I've shown the trailer to, they see that peeing part. They're not big Superman fans. They're like, oh, you know what I mean? It catches them off guard. Maybe that's what they were going for. I'm not really sure, but that is more representative to me of the movie than the peeing part. That's like, okay, she's overshadowed by him. You know what I mean?
Those stories. If Clark wrote the big thing about himself and then someone else wrote the tiny thing about Kara, that's up. Millie specifically seems like so cool. She's capturing this specific era of Supergirl, the sort of like, the Tom King Woman of Tomorrow, like sad, drunk energy of her that I really like. That's not all that the character is by any means. I see people think that like Supergirl was like a terrible character before the Tom King book, which is not true. And say what you will about Tom King being kind of like the cornerstone of all comic creators in the movies right now. Not a fan of that personally. But regardless, I think that like, if you want to really differentiate not just Superman and Supergirl as characters, but also this version of Supergirl from, say, like Melissa Benoist's Supergirl or something like that, like this is a really smart and interesting way to do it, I see a lot of people saying that, like, Supergirl should never be like this. This is nothing like Supergirl. It's so out of character for her.
I've said this a million times, I prefer the Melissa Benoist version, but I don't like the show too much. I like the first 2 seasons for the most part, and the rest of it, I didn't even watch it because I just kind of got out of it. I was like, I'm not really feeling this. But the character I was enjoying. Woman of Tomorrow is the opposite. I like the story, but I don't like the Supergirl as much. You know what I'm saying? And it's interesting. You know what I mean? So would you rather watch something that's good that you're not too big of a fan of, or something that you're a real big fan of, but they just butchered everything? You know what I mean?
And that she should be bright and hopeful and more like the CW Melissa Benoist version.
Because I liked her, but I just can't watch the show.
I really like that version of the character a lot. I really like Melissa Benoist. She's great in that role. The show was whatever, but I really like it. And I think there's two sides to it, right? Because on one hand, that's
what
how
I'm talking about.
That's what they're adapting. That's what the storyline is. The character's not like that for the entire book. It's really kind of just like the first issue, but it's still a big part of what that story's doing. The entire point of the book is her dealing with her trauma and dealing with her kind of like PTSD over, the death of her entire planet and the way she copes with that and the way she...
Okay, so far, guys, this has been the most level-headed... I'm like on this quest to find out what everybody thinks about Supergirl. This has been the most... I've found ones that are just straight up shills. I've found ones that are just straight up like anti-grifters. And then this dude's pretty level-headed about it. He's like, I don't really care, he hadn't said this, but he's like, "I don't really care if it looks like this or seems like that. What I care about is, Woman of Tomorrow is a good story, and this seems like it's following that," and I like that level-headed kinda take that he's doing.
That
That's
goes
pretty
with that
cool.
in this story is getting drunk, is partying, is sort of like repressing that. And I think that's it's part of what makes this book so good and what's so interesting about her. But that's also not to say that's the only time she's ever been interesting in her entire history. The Tom King,
Yeah.
the Woman of Tomorrow version of Wonder Woman, I said Wonder Woman. Tom King, Wonder Woman.
I get it,
We're
man.
not going there. Keep Tom King away from Wonder Woman, please. The Tom King version of Supergirl with Woman of Tomorrow. It is a bit of a departure from how the character has been, for the most part in her history. And some people like to say that she was boring and uninteresting before this comic came out. And this is the book that made her good.
Batman, Superman, Supergirl, which is the Superman Apocalypse or Supergirl Apocalypse cartoon. I prefer I don't know if I've seen the cartoon or not, but I've read the comic, and that's a great version of Supergirl. I like it all. The only thing I didn't like was that she was like 16 and they clearly sexualized her. I also liked her in Superman Brainiac.
Good. And I don't really think that that's fair, right? Like, I think it's kind of like unrealistic to say that the first time her stories have ever been good was 4 years ago. Like, come on. And so I think
she wouldn't have lasted.
There were a lot of people who are like, "Oh, this is nothing like Supergirl, not my Supergirl, blah, blah," and they're really upset about this. The gotcha is always, "Oh, you didn't read the comic. Oh, this is the comic. You're showing you don't read this comic." And like, yeah, you get them. That's so true. But also,
are you wondering what he's going to say? Okay, I'll start it back.
they didn't like Melissa Benoist either when that was happening. Like, that show was considered too woke. Like, where was the support for that show then, And I think if this version of Supergirl was more like that.
Yeah, that one they were like, she's just like Superman. That's what I like. I like her to be just like Superman. But there's always going to be complainers. There's always going to be haters. Don't listen to those people to figure out whether or not you like it. Just judge it for yourself. If you're saying the same thing that other people are saying, slop, one trick pony, garbage, Guardians of the Galaxy 4. You didn't make up these terms. Other people came up with them and you're parroting them. If that's you, try to go about it in a different way. You know what I mean? Try to open your eyes. You may still hate it. It may still suck to you, and that's fine. But make it suck on your own terms for your own mind and brain to have come to that conclusion.
Where she was basically, not to discredit that version of Kara, because that was also a very good version of Kara, she was much more similar to Superman. I think more people would be like, "Oh, she's boring. She's a Mary Sue. This sucks." And it's just like, damn, there's no fucking winning here, right? So I'm not really putting like a ton of like weight to that kind of argument and that kind of that sort of the narrative that's been going around lately. Because people were saying the same thing about Tasha Kaya as Supergirl in The Flash. And speaking of Krypton, we see Krypton. We see, I don't want to get too much into the events of the book, but like we see we see a little snippet of that, which I think this will be very interesting to see how we take the revelations from the Superman movie with the elves and they're kind of maybe not being what we thought they were, and I wonder how much that applies to all of Krypton, if that applies to just the
we
elves
all wonder, man,
or what, right? There's that line, which is also a line from the book about like Krypton didn't die in a day, the gods aren't that kind. I've talked at length about this like numerous times, so I won't go too much into it anymore, and I like that we see a little bit more of it. I want to go in depth and actually explore this culture, depending on how far they stray from the book, that might or might not happen. I made a joke about it earlier, but we also get our first look at Jason Momoa as Lobo, and Jesus Christ, he looks that's Lobo right there. That's crazy. Momoa has always been like,
he looks legit. I gotta say that that I'm not even worried about Lobo. I'm not worried about him. He's gonna nail it. I mean, he's born to play that role. You know what I'm saying? Like when he was Aquaman, I was like, this is as if Lobo was Aquaman. You know what I mean? Like that's how it felt. It was like, why is this dude not playing Lobo?
The perfect casting for Lobo. I've always liked that. And he seemed to always really want to play the character. He seems to really like the character. So I'm really excited to see what he brings here. It does feel just like kind of a little too easy. You know what I'm saying? I think it's more so that like I loved him as Aquaman. I thought he was phenomenal casting in that role because it was so.
He was good.
It was very unorthodox. There's this interview that Momoa did.
I just realized Jason Momoa was an absolute drunk as Aquaman, and people loved him. You know what I mean? Even people that didn't like those movies, they loved Aquaman. You know how I know that? His movie was the only one that did really good. You know what I'm saying? Like his movie did fantastic. So people liked that. So I don't think that the Millie Alcock being drunk for the general populace that don't really know Supergirl are just going to go try to have a weekend of fun. I don't think they're gonna care that much. I really don't. I don't like it, but I don't think they're gonna care.
When he was promoting, I think he was promoting Aquaman 2 when he was doing this, but basically he was talking about like how before Aquaman, he was kind of like typecast into this sort of bad guy role. So he was playing a lot of like either like barbarian characters or like bad guy characters and stuff like that. And he like never in a million years expected himself to be like a titular protagonist hero role. And so he was like caught off guard when Zack Snyder cast him as Aquaman. And I think he did a really good job in that, especially with how James Wan kind of turned that into this like almost like a race allegory of you have a Pacific Islander actor playing a traditionally white character surrounded by a bunch of
blonde white character.
White people who are telling him he's not allowed to exist in their culture and stuff. That came specifically from that casting that probably wouldn't have existed otherwise. It seems like Zack Snyder just wanted to cast him so he could keep playing the sort of like barbarian like Khal Drogo type character. So like not going to give Zack the full credit for that. I'm excited to see what he's going to do with Lobo. He clearly loves this character and he's going to do a great job. Look at him. Oh my God, he looks crazy. He looks amazing. But just kind of like in the back of my heart, right? Just there's always going to be a little piece of me that's like, man, I really liked him as Aquaman. I'm going to miss it a little bit. I'm glad he's...
I'll be okay. I liked him as but I'll be okay. With him as Lobo, I'm down. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
Part of this moving forward still at the very least. And it's interesting because Lobo is a character that's not in the original source material. Lobo's not in Women of Tomorrow at all. This is a completely new thing that they've added.
Correct.
I don't know if he is going to be the main villain here because we do get a look at the main villain, Krem from the comic. He's that.
He even said, this is her movie. I'm just in it a little bit. I've said this a billion times, guys. I'm pretty sure he's just going to replace the Barbarian and he's going to come back. I'm not the Barbarian, what do you call it? Bounty Hunter. He's going to replace the Bounty Hunter and he's going to come back at the end. I've said that a million times. I'm pretty positive that's what's going to happen. And this Krem, I'm disappointed in that Krem. He does not look like Krem. They should have gone with the Krem in the story. This is just like some weird 80s horror film guy. Like, I don't like that at all.
Sort of like leather couch looking dude. I don't know what you'd call that. He looks very different than he does in the source material, which is interesting. I wonder if that was just to make him distinct from Lobo, you know, because in the source material, he's just kind of
he's redheaded. He's distinct from Lobo. And he's not extremely muscular. He's just quite fit.
Just like a dude, you know? And we'll see if he's even in that same kind of role, you know? Because that's the thing that's hard about talking about this movie. Like I said, normally with these comic book movies, adaptations are very loose. Oh, we're pulling from Civil War. They don't pull from Civil War at all. Oh, we're pulling from Infinity Gauntlet. They don't pull from Infinity Gauntlet.
Man of Steel was pulled from Birthright, and it's like, I see the influence, but it's quite different.
Whatsoever. Even something like Invincible, which is a direct adaptation, is still making these kind of grand sweeping changes to the point where like, I don't know what's going to happen. But you know, they've already changed landmark things with a lot of the relationships and a lot of the people and characters and stuff, which is what's keeping that show fresh and making it feel modern and not like it's something from, you know,
I don't watch that
2000s and stuff. And so I wonder if this will be more like that, but let's take the pieces and then kind of redraw it.
I hope that we see aliens like that. People were complaining there was too many Guardians of the Galaxy style aliens in there. And we're not. I would like to see aliens like that right there, where it's just like they'd probably have to be CGI. You know what I mean? And as long as it's not all of them, like just here and there, that would be cool because there are a bunch of different types of aliens in that book that feel alien
with other intent behind it. Or is this going to be like a novel to movie adaptation where like the beats are all the same and it's the same story for the most part? And then, you know, any changes made, ideally, not everything, obviously, but like ideally, the most amount of changes would be made to physically adapt the medium of book to movie. And so it makes my job or talk a little selfish. It makes my job as like someone who talks about this stuff. You'd think it'd make it easier, right? Because I'm like, oh, I know what happens. Oh, I know what happens in the book. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. I don't want to ruin this experience.
That is hard, man.
I don't want to spoil the movie and I don't want to spoil the book. You know, if you want to read this book, you should read the book. And I don't want to be like, okay, well, this character's this, so this is going to happen. This, you know, like usually want to do these trailer analysis videos or
because it could be wrong. It could be 100% wrong.
Like any videos about an upcoming movie, I'm like, oh, I want this to happen. I wonder if this will happen. Or like, whereas with this movie, assuming that it is more or less a direct adaptation, we kind of already know what's happening, right? We kind of already know. Like you just read the book, you know, and so I don't want to happen what happened with like Wicked, where like you watch the first part and you're like, oh, cool, and then
I have zero interest in the movie. I'm sure it's fantastic. I'm sure it's very well done, but I think if I sat through it and watched it, I wouldn't enjoy it. It's just not my thing. You know what I mean? It's like Gone with the Wind. I can tell it's a great movie when I watch it. but I do not care.
Instantly you go online, everybody's already spoiled the second part because of the musical from 20 years ago, right? And yet technically the book has been around for, you know, almost 5 years at this point. Wicked, the musical, it's already been around for 20 years. But like, I feel like when you do an adaptation of it, that sort of resets the like spoiler timer, you know? And granted, like I said, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to be changed, you know? But I think the broad strokes are going to be the same. There's something that's going to happen at the beginning of this movie that like, I know it's going to happen, and it's not going to be fun, but I don't want to tell people that. It's hard enough talking about Invincible. If I mention that, like, oh, this character, and I mention them by name, and I say, oh, this character's really cool in Invincible, you're going to love this character, people will be like, why would you spoil it for me? Why would you ruin it? Like, I didn't spoil anything. I just said a guy's name, but like, you know.
Yes, people are crazy with spoil. See, I was one of those people till I started these channels. You know, I just started this one a couple weeks ago, but my Kryptonite Korner channel where I talk about just Superman, I had to realize if I want to talk to people about Superman all the time, which I really, really do, I don't want to just hold it in like I've always done all these years. I'm like, I'm going to have to be okay with spoilers. I got so mad with Batman versus Superman when I saw on supermanhomepage.com, which I love and you should subscribe to. I saw a thing and it was talking about Doomsday being in there. I had no idea Doomsday was going to be in there. I had kept away from everything. And that was when I unfollowed everything. And I didn't follow it again until several years later. Probably up until recently, some of it even, because I was like, I didn't want to be spoiled. Now I'm like, you know what? I can be spoiled if I get to talk to you guys, because I really do. As you know, I answer pretty much all your comments. At least the initial ones. The replies is where I get lost because the way this stuff works. But yeah, I get it, man. I
still see that way.
I get it. I just really hope that the amount of talking about Woman of Tomorrow so far hasn't spoiled it for anybody just yet, because even people saying they're trying not to spoil it, I'm like, why are you giving that away? And you're literally saying you're not trying to spoil it, like we watched with Coy, who works with DC, you know? Like,
and so I think it's made talking about this movie really difficult, at least when it comes to like the story and the plot and everything, the characters and all that stuff. I can still talk about like the design. I can still talk about like the direction and everything. And that's the stuff that's really interesting me here, because they are taking liberties here when it comes to the visuals of this story versus the comic. Because when it comes to the design of this movie, I see a lot of people like comparing it to the original book, right? And I see them being like, it's not colorful enough, or like it looks too much like Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy was colorful. I don't understand that complaint. I don't get it.
Which, like, I see that. I especially see that with the colors. The colors in that book are phenomenal.
Well, but we didn't see a space dragon in the freaking trailer. I'm sure if there's a space dragon in the trailer, it's going to be different. You know?
Lopez did an incredible job. Oh my God, that book is gorgeous in huge part because of him. And it's another example of colorists not getting enough credit in the comics industry. And so I think like for an adaptation of it, you would want it to be super bright, super colorful to kind of match that, right? And so I do kind of see that, but I also really like the kind of grungier, like almost dirty aesthetic of this. It is very Guardians of the Galaxy.
It feels real and lived in when they do things that way. Whenever things like the way, you know, Krypton is on Superman, which I like that a lot. I like the crystal cities and all that, but everything's so clean. It doesn't feel like they actually live there. You know what I mean? It's like on Superman Returns when Lex created the new Krypton. He was like, oh, I see an apartment and this and that. I'm like, how? It doesn't even look like it looks like barren land you could never live on.
Galaxy, which isn't a bad thing, I don't think. What is interesting is that this is going to be the first time in the DCU we have a director that's not James Gunn. This is not James Gunn's project. This is Craig Gillespie's. And I'm a big fan of his work with stuff like I, Tonya, but then also Cruella. That movie had every possible reason to be like the worst like animated to live action slop. You know, that's that kind of thing that we get. And it turned out like really cool and really fun. It's a really good time. And I don't think it got enough credit when it came out. And it's a little bit Guardians of the Galaxy. That might just be the trailer, to be honest. Like we've seen so many movie trailers.
I think it probably is just the trailer. The colorful lasers, people are talking about that. I'm like, I mean, you can use colorful lasers. It's okay. James Gunn doesn't get the credit for colorful lasers in 80s music. You know what I mean? Like, he shouldn't get that much credit. That jacket he gets credit for, and it's in the book, you know?
Like, oh, this is too much like Guardians, and is not.
And when it's in the book, it's not Guardians looking. I mean, she looks more like a pirate than she does like Star-Lord.
Nothing like Guardians. Looking at you, original Suicide Squad. People are like, oh, James Gunn ripped off himself. James Gunn didn't make this movie. But I do think it's very interesting that the original source material, the comic, is very like, it's very fantasy. Like that kind of aesthetic and that kind of feel. Whereas this is looking a lot more sci-fi with it, which is interesting. And I don't hate that. I think that that's a smart way to kind of let those two sort of differentiate themselves and coexist and stuff like that. You know, I like it. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't want this to be a replacement for the comic. I don't want people to do what they did with like Long Halloween, where like people watch the animated Long Halloween and they're like, oh, I read Long Halloween. I'm like, no, you didn't. That's not the same thing. You know, even the good, even the great direct adaptations of comics.
Oh, that's a good one. I think that's the Justice League Frontier.
You know, something like New Frontier, which is a phenomenal adaptation of an even more phenomenal book. It's still not the same experience. And I don't think you should ever replace reading the original material with, you know, watching someone adapt it. Because there's always...
Yeah, people tell me that they love Superman Apocalypse. I'm like, that's based on Superman, Batman, Supergirl, which is, you know, really good. And there's a lot of those animated movies where they do that.
There's gonna be stuff lost in translation. There's always gonna be stuff added. Like, could you imagine being like, oh yeah, Percy Jackson, love Percy Jackson, I love those books, and you only watch the movie or you only watch the TV show? Like, they're different. They're different things, and that's what's fun about adaptations. That's what I love about adaptations. Even the quote unquote bad adaptations, I do still find an enjoyment in seeing the changes and seeing the decisions and seeing the reasoning behind them. Watchmen being a good example. I don't really like the Watchmen. I very much dislike the Watchmen movie. I don't think it shouldn't exist though. I do think that it could, you know, there's that's a can of worms. I'm not touching Watchmen, actually. Comics are this revolving door of creatives for generations, right? And I think people want to see like comics perfectly adapted into some other medium, either because they want the stories to be shown and given more of a spotlight directly as they are, or because they want an excuse to not read the comics, but that's a whole other thing. And people want the comic stories to kind of remain like pure and like exactly the same every single time. But like, I would much rather see that sort of revolving door of creativity and revolving door of intention also applied to the adaptations, right?
That would be like every time you do a new Superman origin story, you just do the exact same one from the beginning. If they did that, it would be a short little clip showing how he can jump like a grasshopper because he's from Krypton, which evolved differently. You know what I mean? Like it would be a very quick little clip of something that you know is like, what?
I think it's what led to something like the Batman. The Batman is not a direct adaptation of anything. You know, you could say it's Long Halloween, you could say it's a little bit of Hush, not really, barely any Hush. Thematically, it's very much Batman Ego, and you could say it's year one with like how early he is, but there's nothing directly pulled from anywhere, and it allows for so much more interesting things, because like you look at like Penguin with Sophia Falcone, that is a really interesting take on the character that is very different from how she was in not really Long Halloween, but mostly A Dark Victory, the next one. And that wouldn't be possible if we just directly adapted adaptations, right? And it adds so much more nuance and so many more layers to these characters and to these stories. And so at the end of the day, I'm not sure if I want this to become just the new thing for DC movies, where every movie is a direct adaptation of an existing story. Like, I wouldn't want to see a hypothetical Black Canary movie just be...
I would like to see some more of it, but I get what he's saying.
Directly the exact same as her Tom King miniseries, or a Green Arrow movie be just adapting year one. Oh, and by the way, speaking of a Green Arrow movie, next week, baby. Next week. But that's not to say I'm completely against the idea of direct adaptations, not by any means. I think they're a great way to showcase specific storylines and creative teams.
And we still don't know for sure that this is in fact a direct adaptation, but it seems like it's gonna be pretty close.
To a wider audience. Maybe even be a gateway into the larger world of comic books. The common adage you see all the time is that comics are too hard to get into because there are too many number ones, which I don't personally agree with. But adapting a single, easy to comprehend graphic novel skirts those issues altogether. Not to mention some of the most famous and influential films of all time are adaptations of novels. So
that I've heard is pretty close, but it's also very different. I don't want to spoil it. Spoiler alert, okay? The main park dude, I can't remember his name. He dies. And in the movie, obviously, he does not.
Why should it be any different for comic books? And so when it comes to the Supergirl movie, who knows if it really is going to be a one-to-one.
I expect something like that. It to be very close one-to-one, but like how in the Jurassic Park one, you know, he dies in the book, but not in the movie. Something like that, where something that you thought was going to happen, like, I don't know if Comet's going to be in there. You know what I mean? I have no idea if Comet's going to be in there. We'll see.
Adaptation, or if it will take those kinds of sweeping liberties we always see. But what I can say is, based on everything we've seen so far, from Millie Alcock to Jason Momoa, director Craig Gillespie and writer Anna Nogueira, I think that this has a lot of potential to be something really special. But what do you think of the Supergirl trailer? And if you've read Woman of Tomorrow, what do you think they should change here? If you like this video, be sure to the like button and subscribe. Special thanks to Holly Poppy, BrendaX9213, Shin Mensiok, Godzilla Dreamer, ZBB Buddy, and Preston DeBattez for joining the Spectacular Fanboys.
All right, guys, that was a great video. I really like his take. Tell me if you agree with me. I think he's got a very level-headed take on this, whereas we've seen, you know, people that are just like gung-ho, gonna be great. We've seen people that are like trash just from the teaser trailer, you know, which is unfinished clips. I like the way he's thinking. He's like, a one-to-one would be great if they get it right. Don't know if they are. Excited to see where they're going. You know, that's how I feel. That's how I feel right now. I'm not as much that way with Man of Tomorrow. I'm a little worried about Man of Tomorrow and some things that they're doing. I've talked about that in some other videos, but just let me know what you guys think. All right, go ahead and put it in the comments. Don't forget to check out my Superman Amazon store where I have all sorts of Superman stuff in one location. And you should also do me one big favor, which is watching another video.